China unveiled its latest flying car. This is not science fiction, it's reality with cutting-edge design and smooth aerodynamic lines.
This exact one flew up in the air. This is going to be a prototype for the world's first ever flying car.
Over 100 years ago, the Wright brothers shocked everyone when they flew their first plane over the skies of North Carolina. And now China has taken the world by storm with the release of its first flying car that will change everything.
Chinese electric vehicle maker XPeng's flying car has made its first public flight, taken to the sky in Dubai.
Capable of driving on land and road, this car will transform the automobile industry forever. Follow us into the world where the lines between fiction and reality gets blurred as we explore the story of the XPeng X2. The birth of a new generation. October 10th, 2022. Over 150 people gathered to witness history as the XPeng X2 soared through the skies, taking its first public flight at Skydive Dubai. Built by the Chinese company XPeng, this flying car was a culmination of years of hard work, dedication, and a thirst for the impossible. After conquering the world of electric vehicles, developing some of the most sustainable and technologically advanced EVs in the market, China has decided to take things to a whole new level, developing cars that will break every single rule of the automotive industry. Skydive Dubai was perfect for the showcase. Located adjacent to the Palm and offering what could be the most excellent airspace conditions and panoramic views of the cityscape, it was one of the few places the X2 could spread its wings and display its advanced engineering. The event was highly supported by the Dubai International Chamber of Commerce, which had been a major part of the project since it was first launched. However, this wasn't the first time XPeng would try their hands at sending a car into the skies. As a matter of fact, the X2 is a fifth-generation flying car. However, this particular prototype looks more promising than the previously unveiled versions, and you could be seeing these futuristic cars soaring over your cities within less than a decade. For the first time, the X2 adopts an enclosed cockpit with a minimalistic design shaped like a teardrop, as well as a cool sci-fi appearance. But while this may seem like a simple aesthetic choice, the design also provides highly efficient aerodynamics, ultimately providing the best in-flight performance of any flying car. But if you're going to send a car flying around, it definitely can't weigh as much as a regular car. To solve this problem, XPeng made sure the X2 has a complete carbon fiber structure. Then there's the fact that this two-seater flying machine does not produce any carbon dioxide emissions during flight. So not only is it futuristic, it's also good for the environment and will probably lead the way in the pursuit of urban green transportation. While it's quite unrealistic to expect a flying car to perform like a private plane, the XPeng X2 will definitely be suitable for future low-altitude city flights, perfect for short-distance city journeys. But then, here's the big question. How do you drive this thing? Well, the XPeng X2 is equipped with two driving modes. There's the manual mode, where drivers will be in total control of the vehicle, with little to no help from advanced technologies. Then there's the autonomous flight, which allows passengers to enjoy a safe and intelligent flying experience.
It's so strange to not have any toggles, anything to move around, and you're just flying in like an automated flight.
With just the touch of a button, the XPeng X2 will deploy its array of technological advancements to take off, go from one destination to another, and land when it's time. Putting the test flight together in Dubai wasn't an easy feat. Working in partnership with the DCAA, the team received the permission to fly in the city's airspace. Then a professional XPENF AROHT collected the technical information from the X2 R&D team. And with reference to the international standard model, they formulated the operation concept and manual of the X2 demonstration flight. With help from the Sanad Academy and the Dubai Civil Aviation Authority, the experts developed a risk mitigation plan to ensure that the flight was safe and free of tragedies. Not surprisingly, the flying car performed very well, which meant that XPeng AROHT was one of the first companies to pass the assessment in Dubai with that specific weight class. So what's next? Well, later in June 2020, XPeng X2 took its first flight in Beijing, and according to the company, the actual car might be available for sale by 2033. But while this car seemed to have emerged straight from a sci-fi movie, it wasn't the first flying car ever produced. History of flying cars.
It's a flying car whose 350 horsepower motor and huge fans give it the ability to skim along a foot above the ground.
The first time the world got to see a flying car was in 1900, and it all started with one man, Gustav Whitehead. He was a German immigrant who moved to the United States and knew a thing or two about turning cars into birds.
Whitehead was a native of Germany. He then moved to Connecticut.
Sure, his own version didn't look exactly like the Xpeng X2. After all, this was over 100 years ago. But with the level of technology available at the time, Gustav managed to fly a powered aircraft, which was also capable of running on the ground. Sadly, historians have a habit of raining on Gustav's parade, thanks to the general consensus that his vehicle did not achieve sustained self-powered flight. Later in 1917, another aircraft designer named Glenn Curtiss unveiled his new invention, the autoplane. It was a curious-looking aircraft with a pusher propeller for flight and removable flight surfaces, which included a triplane wing, canard foreplane, and twin tails. Up until this point, no one had been able to successfully morph a car and a plane into one huge abomination. But in the corners of their secret garages and private labs, dozens of engineers still kept the dream alive. Fast forward to 1935, and a man named Konstantinos Vlachos shocked the world when he unveiled a trifinian vehicle, which had a circular wing. The idea behind this one was to build a vehicle capable of traveling on every medium, from land to water to the skies. But even though Vlachos had a good thing going, it all went down the drain when the engine exploded during testing in Washington, D.C. Since he was in the car at the time, Vlachos was badly injured and would go on to spend several months in the hospital. While we didn't get to see whether the vehicle would actually fly, most people still remember it for a newsreel that captured the incident. The next time another flying car took the skies was March 26, 1936. Designed by the Autogiro Company of America, this vehicle was known as the AC-35 and was flown by test pilot James G. Ray. At first, the forward thrust was provided by twin counter-rotating propellers for thrust, but was later replaced with a single propeller. Later, on October 26, 1936, the aircraft was then converted to a roadable configuration. Following this transformation, Ray drove the vehicle to the main entrance of the Commerce Building in Washington, D.C., and handed it over to the chief of the Aeronautics branch, John H. Geisy. However, even though the car was successfully tested and seemed to work just fine, it never made it into production. Again, in 1937, another ambitious engineer named Waldo Waterman unveiled the first fixed-wing roadable aircraft. He called it the Aerobile, and just like James Ray's version, this one also worked as designed. With a wingspan of 38 feet and a length of 20 feet 6 inches, the Aerobile was unlike any other flying car of the time. Under the hood, it was powered by a Studebaker engine, pushing it to a top flying speed of 112 miles per hour and a top driving speed of 56 miles per hour. As technology became more and more advanced, the British Army also decided to dip its foot in the flying cars industry. By 1942, their years of research and development had paid off, resulting in an experimental roadable autogyro known as the Hafner rotor buggy, also known as the Flying Jeep. The idea was to airdrop these off-road vehicles into active combat zones, and for a while it seemed like a pretty solid plan. The rotor buggy was capable of flying at a top speed of 70 miles per hour. However, as soon as the British Army figured out a way to carry vehicles like the Waco Hadrian and Airspeed Horsa using gliders, they decided the project was no longer necessary, so they cancelled it. Since then, several other designs have made it out of the design phase, like the Convair car, which actually managed to soar into the skies as expected. However, none of these cars have ever experienced the commercial success they really need to get into the mainstream. The search for a working design. Ideas never die, they just evolve. A good example would be Taylor Aerocar, released in 1949. Designed and built by American aeronautical engineer Milt Taylor, the Aerocar made its first successful flight in December 1949. This was then followed by years of road and flying tests, before the car was finally unveiled to the public in Chuck Berry's 1956 song, "You Can't Catch Me." Most people don't know this, but the Aerocar was also one of the first flying cars to get mass production approval from the Civil Aviation Authority. Here's the sad part though. Despite the massive publicity surrounding the vehicle, as well as an improved version released in 1989, Taylor just couldn't get the car into production. In total, only 6 Taylor Aerocars were ever built, most of which are locked away in museums around the world.
Serial number 4, it's the only one that's actively flying. Of the 5 that were built, the other 4 are in museums.
But even though the project never made it out of the warehouse, there's no way to explore the history of flying cars without paying homage to the Aerocar, as it's considered the most practical flying car ever built. Just like Henry Smolensky's Mizar, this particular one might look a bit familiar, and that's probably because it was built by merging the rear end of a Cessna Skymaster with a Ford Pinto. Unfortunately though, the story of the Mizar ended in a huge tragedy after the flight disintegrated during testing, killing Smolensky and the pilot. Then there was the Moller Skycar M400, a project for a personal vertical takeoff and landing aircraft.
Ed DeRay's Thorntail Aircraft, as well as the entire Terrafugia team.
Powered by 4 pairs of Wankel rotary engines. It even had an electric version, which was powered by Alternano batteries. However, the company ended up producing nothing of value and has been dormant since 2015. Around the mid-1980s, a former Boeing engineer named Fred Barker founded Flight Innovations Incorporated, which kick-started the development of the Sky Commuter, a small aircraft also capable of driving on land. It was compact, stretched for 14 feet, and could carry 2 passengers. But just like its predecessors, it only ended up as a concept. And in 2008, the remaining prototype was sold on eBay for $86,000. Not surprisingly, the United States government has also tried building a flying car. That was in 2009 when the Defense Advanced Research Projects, or DARPA, initiated a transformer program with a massive budget of $65 million. The goal? To develop a 4-person roadable aircraft by 2015. This proposed vehicle would also use the VTOL technology with a range of up to 280 miles. To handle the contracts, DARPA picked AAI Corporation and Lockheed Martin. But even with the government's backing and a fat purse supporting the project, they still couldn't manage to produce a flying car, and the program was shut down in 2013. You've probably never heard of the Parajet Skycar. It's another flying car project that looked promising at first, but ended up disappearing just like the rest. Outside, the car's main body consisted of a modified dune buggy. Inside, it had a solid engine that could push it to a top speed of 80 miles per hour. With a maximum range of up to 180 miles in the air. On the ground, the Parajet Skycar could go 112 miles per hour, with a maximum range of 249 miles. This impressive performance was demonstrated in January 2009 when a prototype of the Skycar managed to fly and drive from London to Timbuktu. But then the project suddenly died a natural death, and the only working prototype is probably locked up in a museum somewhere. The Maverick Flying Dune Buggy was another flying car that's probably been forgotten by everyone except its developers. Built by the Indigenous Peoples Technology and Education Center of Florida, this weird-looking car was supposed to be an off-road vehicle that could unfurl an advanced parachute.
Okay. And you're a powered parachute expert. Give us a little of your background on powered parachutes first.
And then travel by air over impassable terrains. This meant the car would be able to keep going when the trails and roadways are no longer usable. In its glory days, it weighed 1,100 pounds and was powered by a 128 horsepower engine, capable of driving a 5-bladed pusher propeller. Unlike the Xpeng X2, this wasn't built as a luxury vehicle. Instead, the developers wanted a Maverick vehicle that would help bring aid to the communities within the Amazon rainforest, as well as other desolate areas and difficult terrain. Later in 2016, a company called Aeromobile showcased a prototype that obtained Slovan Ultralight certification. It managed to fly, but we still don't know whether it will go into production or how much it will cost. The only update about this project came in 2018 when Aeromobile unveiled a concept that resembled a flying sports car capable of virtual liftoff. Known as the Aeromobile 2.5, this vehicle featured advanced folding wings and a Rotax 912 engine. It's also capable of traveling at 124 miles per hour with a range of 420 miles. The first time the aeromobile took to the skies was in 2013, and since then, other versions have been revealed to the public, although we still don't know when it'll enter full production. After exploring the full story of how we got here and the dozens of prototypes that have been developed for the past 123 years, it's hard not to appreciate the beauty of the XPeng X2. Following the successful test flight in Dubai and a later test in Beijing, the company has announced its plans to begin mass production by the beginning of the next decade, which means in about 5 years, we could be looking at a sky full of cars. Sure, this would solve a whole lot of problems, especially for crowded cities where millions of cars get stuck on the road for hours and hours. But of course, it would also create its own unique problems. More damage to our ecosystem, new kinds of accidents and emergencies, and maybe we'll even need to redefine those airspace rules. Are we looking at the birth of a new training industry that will integrate the world into this new reality? Then there's the price. Although the company hasn't made any definite statement about how much their flying cars will be sold for, some sources claim it'll probably be around $5,000. For context, the price of a regular sedan like the BMW M4 is around $79,100, and it doesn't fly. So how will an actual flying car cost much less than BMW? Some believe China holds a secret strategy that helps them produce cheaper and sell cheaper. But with what could be the first flying car to ever enter mass production, there's a very high chance it'll cost way more than $5,000. Some even claim it could cost up to $200,000, so that probably debunks the affordability myth. But for those who are able to afford the X2, it'll definitely offer an experience of a lifetime. If you take a good look at the car itself, you'll realize it looks a lot like a drone. And if you've been following news from China, you'll notice they've been investing a lot in their drone technology within the past few years. But what does this mean for the future of flying cars? And is China about to create a whole new economy, leaving the rest of the world to play catch-up? The low-altitude economy, China's drones. Drones are a hot topic in the United States right now. One was recently spotted in New Jersey, another one in North Texas, and probably a few more we don't really know about just yet. And although these drones probably didn't come all the way from China, our faraway frenemies have been taking really giant strides in that department for a while now. As of 2024, China is the largest exporter of military drones, or if you'd prefer the more fancy name, unmanned aerial vehicles. Out of the many drones developed in China, the Winglong and Rainbow Series UAV are definitely the most popular, thanks to their impressive capabilities. According to data provided by the CIPRI Arms Transfer Database, between 2008 and 2018, China exported a total of 181 fighter combat drones, as well as 163 strike-capable UAVs. 22% of these went to the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia got 19%, and Egypt and Pakistan got 15% and 14% respectively. These drones have found their place on the battlefield, from the Middle East to faraway Africa. For example, the Saudis recently used the Winglong 2 drones against the Houthis in Yemen. Egypt used the same type of fighter drones against the militant groups in North Sinai, and Chinese combat drones have carried out up to 260 air raids against ISIS in Iraq. Not only are these drones redefining warfare as we know it, they're also boosting China's economy in more ways than you can imagine. As of 2023, China's low-altitude economy was worth approximately $70 billion, becoming one of the major drivers of the country's economic growth. It's no longer news that China is trying really hard to dominate this field, especially with the recent policies introduced by the government, which will provide a safe haven for startup tech companies that'll produce high-quality products the whole world really needs in this era. The results of these policies are pretty clear for everyone to see. Within just a few years, several startups have emerged in this field. There's EHang, there's Autoflight, then there's XPeng Aerost, the company responsible for the development of the X2. While China has been very committed to driving the development of emerging industries, for one, it's quite risky to invest in an industry that has not been tested. Dozens of things can go wrong, causing the entire industry to crumble to the ground. And by studying the history of drones and flying cars, it's not hard to find several cases where seemingly promising projects die a natural death. But even with the risk attached, China keeps pumping millions and billions of dollars into the research and development of UAVs and advanced drones, which shows that the Chinese government is really focused on dominating in this new field. while other countries tether on the safety lines. Most people don't realize it yet, but we're in an industrial revolution that will be remembered in the history books forever. Times are changing, and as it stands, China is leading the pack in this new world. And quite frankly, it's paying off for them. As of 2024, China has such a huge demand for new technologies, all thanks to the sheer size of its manufacturing sector, as well as the low-altitude economy. New electric virtual takeoff and landing aircraft are being developed, AI is getting smarter and more efficient in design and production, and our ideas on how to make batteries better are improving by the day. But behind these amazing new machines are fields that don't get talked about enough. Digital modeling, virtual simulation, intelligent sensing, and machine vision, just to name a few. Every single one of these new technologies contributes greatly to the domination plan crafted by the Chinese government and the desire to accelerate their commercialization. Beyond the military use of drones, several industries are also exploring how to incorporate the use of drones, from logistics to traffic patrol to emergency rescue and even surveying and mapping. While most of the eVTOL tech in the market are currently unmanned, we'll probably be seeing more manned application scenarios in the near future as the technology continues to improve. However, there's one major issue that keeps holding everyone back, and it's the strict control the Chinese government holds on its airspace. Speaking of which, check out our subscribers pick for today. This picture recently appeared on the internet with the caption "China releases first $4,999 flying car that changes everything." While the flying car, which looks like an actual supercar with jet engines, may not be real, the XPeng X2 may be the closest thing we have to a real flying car. With the level of possibilities China has been able to achieve in 2024, we can only imagine how the industry would look like by the dawn of the next decade. Do you think the United States will catch up to China in the development of drone technology? Or is the government willing to allow China to dominate like they're already doing? Let us know in the comments section below. Now let's get back to the video. Welcome to the new normal. The skies may appear bright and free, but they're probably more strictly protected than the grounds we walk and drive on. For security reasons, nations can't allow anyone and everyone to travel in and out of their airspace. That's how you get foreign spy planes, unauthorized visitors, and even weapons of mass destruction flying into your country. For a country like China, with more enemies in the West than friends, maintaining a tight grip on its airspace is the only way to maintain peace and stability. So where does this leave the developers of its low-altitude economy? How do you test new aircraft technology when the laws are super strict and crossing them could get you in big trouble? For most countries that have entered the drone race, the decision has been difficult, but left with no choice. Most of them eventually switch from a military-led airspace management to a civilian-led airspace management. That's the only way you can be sure your new tech prototypes won't be classified as a threat within your own territory. For countries like the United States, airspace resources have gradually shifted more towards civilians over the past few decades. Of course, since we're not at war, military planes don't parade the country, leaving them with only 20% control over the airspace. Back in November 2023, China's Civil Aviation Administration and other departments released draft regulations on airspace management for comment. This new document listed out a new set of rules for using the airspace, with Class G and Class W airspace designated below 300 meters as uncontrolled airspace. This way, companies can carry out low-altitude flights without any problems. That's how far we've been able to go for now. But in the near future, various regions could be able to formulate their own detailed rules about airspace management, implement them, and then coordinate with their neighbors to ensure everyone follows the rules. Just as we had to draft traffic regulations when cars became a thing, we might be getting a new rulebook if flying cars ever became mainstream. To prepare for this future, as well as take advantage of the present drone market, China is planning to increase its manufacturing capabilities. Back in late 2021, Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group signed an agreement with the Zhejiang Municipal Government of Sichuan to jointly build the largest domestic UAV industrial base in the world. Worth over 10 billion yuan, or about $1.55 billion, this new industrial plant will be responsible for manufacturing both military and commercial UAVs. It has now been operational since 2023, so let's just say this wild dream is no longer a dream. With these new drones and the flying cars coming in a few years, It's safe to say we're about to enter a new futuristic era where sci-fi meets reality. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.